Hi everybody, I'm Fran Spielman and this is the Fran Spielman Show, sponsored by AARP. Our guest today is Lori Lightfoot, the mayoral candidate, the former federal prosecutor, police board president, and so many other things in government. Welcome.
Yes. It's my pleasure to be here.
So, you've had quite the week.
It's been a great week. Really good week. I think that we are surging and peaking at the right time, and people, the undecideds are still out there, but I think they're paying attention, and I think they're undecided because, frankly, after millions of dollars in TV ads by the Burke Four, they recognize that they need an alternative, and they need a choice that's different from the past. And we are doing everything we can to reach out to voters all over the city and the undecideds to say, hey, look us over. We offer a very different perspective, an independent reform candidate who's not part of the past. And I think we need to turn the page from that and move forward in a different direction. And from what we are seeing and what we're hearing, that message is definitely resonating and starting to catch fire.
Now you have the added gift, I would say, by Toni Preckwinkle firing, the midnight firing of her campaign manager. Let's explain to the viewers out there. This was about a Facebook post. Mm-hmm. So many social media things that are spur of the moment and in bad taste. In this case, Scott Cizik made fun of something you said about your role as a former young federal prosecutor who had been reprimanded by a judge, and you had said I was following orders, and he used a picture of the Nuremberg trials to say just following orders, that doesn't wash, or that excuse didn't work.
Right.
Let's talk about this.
Sure.
What does it say about Toni Preckwinkle, or does it just say something about him?
No, I think it's a bigger issue than this, right? It's, first of all, to trivialize what is arguably one of the worst genocides in human history and use it as a political jab or stunt, really, I think, is unbelievably offensive. It's actually hard for me to find the appropriate word to characterize it. I don't know anybody who saw that or even heard about it that wasn't deeply offended by it, and frankly, rightfully so. But and the fact that this happened mid-afternoon and it took hours before there was any action, I think also says something. Toni Preckwinkle has been a person over the arc of this campaign that only seems to find her way to do the right thing when she's caught and cornered. And I think that's a problem. But, look, we're going to move on. I think where we need to be in these waning days and hours of the campaign is to continue to articulate a positive vision forward for the city. People want change. They want a leader who they can believe in, who they can trust to take on the tough challenges that we're going to face. Rahm Emanuel is going to be leaving office with a very large stack of unfinished business that is going to be front and center for the next mayor. And I think what people want to know is, can the next leader of the third largest city in the country be a person who can bring folks together, who can offer a positive vision, particularly in contrast to what we see on a daily basis from the Trump administration. We have to be different in the city, and we can be different with the right kind of leader, and I believe that I'm that leader.
She has now fired her chief of staff, her security chief, and now her campaign manager, who also had a top job at the county. Why should we care about this? What does it say about her, if anything?
Well, like I said, I sadly, what we've seen over the arc of this campaign and what we've learned through, frankly, I think very good reporting, is that she makes very bad decisions about the people that she aligns herself with, whether it's Tony Resco, whether it's Scott Cizik, Scott Keller, her security chief, and of course, Ed Burke. This is a person who a lot of people have nostalgia for when she was a fourth ward alderman, but that's not who she is now. She just aspired to climb the ladder of being a party boss, and as a consequence, I think made a lot of compromises along the way that I think have played out and show that she's a very different person. We need somebody who is going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're forced to do it because there's no other political way out. We need a leader who's going to speak the truth to people in the city, and a leader that people can be proud of. Somebody who, I think like myself, who has a track record of independence, even in hard, difficult circumstances. And there have been a lot of hard issues that I've faced, particularly around police reform and accountability, really walking into a lot of skepticism and headwinds, and finding the right thing to do through listening and conversations with people and reflecting the lived experience of people in the city. That is the way that we get things done. That's the way that we unite people. And that is the vision of leadership that I have lived, and that is what I will bring to the mayor's office.
I remember covering Jane Byrne, and there was constant talk about the revolving door spinning again.
Yeah.
Does Toni Preckwinkle have a revolving door?
Look, I think the bigger issue is about her leadership, about her failure to do the right thing unless she's cornered or caught. And yeah, I think there's valid questions about the people that she surrounds herself. And there's a litany of them. You know, again, not just Keller and Cizik, but Berrios and Tony Resco and Ed Burke. Why does she align herself with people like that, of that ilk?
Why do you think?
It's hard for me to understand. But it probably has something to do with, you know, maintaining political power. But what we need
Are you saying she's a sellout?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's hard for me to understand. For example, in the case of Ed Burke is one of the most racist, awful people in public life. And it doesn't bring me any pleasure to say that. But I came to the city at a time when he was full-throated, doing everything he could to oppose the first black mayor, a true progressive, a true beacon of light. And how you would align yourself with somebody like that, who didn't have some epiphany later on in life and decided, no, I'm this good person. Ed Burke is exactly the same person today as he was in 1983, 1986. And yet she aspired.
Well, he adopted and raised a black child. I mean, what was that about? Has he not changed at all over
I
the
think
years?
in his public life and the way that he views power and the accumulation of power, there's not one little bit of difference. All you have to do is read that criminal complaint. Now, I hasten to add, he's of course entitled to a presumption of innocence, but man, oh man, what's revealed in those tapes and the way that he operates now, that's not a person I would ever align myself with.
You're a former federal prosecutor. You put a corrupt alderman, Virgil Jones, in prison.
Yes.
Where is this investigation going? To me, it seems like it could topple the entire power structure of Illinois and Chicago.
Well, what I can glean is that there's a lot of different tentacles to this, and a lot that hasn't, frankly, been disclosed in a public view. I would expect that after the election, late spring, early summer, and probably throughout the balance of the year, some of these cases are going to start to get rolled out. And you know, I was a prosecutor at the time of Silver Shovel, which was the last big political corruption scandal that shook the city. I think this promises to be at least as big, if not bigger, than that. When you have Danny Solis wearing a wire for 2 years, the chairman of the zoning board, who so many people clearly had to come and kiss the ring because of the position of power that he held, the doors that he could walk into. I think we have, you know, your imagination is not going to be able to conjure up what I think is going to ultimately be rolled out in a series of criminal complaints and indictments.
Is it going to be the business community too? Is it going to be Mike Madigan and people at the state level?
I think it's anyone that he conceivably had access to, who frankly wasn't working on the square. I think it's going to be it's going to rock the city, but frankly, all the more reason why we need a mayor who isn't part of that culture. We're going to have a steady hand at the till when these federal cases start rolling out. And we're going to have somebody that people can believe in and trust to get business done and not be caught up in any of it. I don't think any of the Burke Four, frankly, can say that. And look, whether it's Toni Preckwinkle, who frankly made herself a fact witness in the Ed Burke case because of the fundraiser and frankly her many different equivocations about her relationship, where the money came from, who initiated the fundraiser. She's going to get questioned by the FBI, to be sure. There's no question about that.
Do you think she already has?
I don't know if she already has, but there's no question in my mind that she will. That's a certainty. It's just a question of, because of her connection to Ed Burke, because of, frankly, the charges against Ed Burke featured the fact that he extorted a campaign contribution for her. And I don't think she's told the public the truth yet.
What do you think? I mean, do you think she knew about it?
I don't think she knew about that, but your common sense tells you a decent prosecutor, and the prosecutors who handle these cases are more than decent, they're excellent. And the FBI, they're gonna wanna know what was said. How did this fundraiser come to be? And they're gonna look, of course, at every dollar that was raised during that fundraiser to make a determination if Ed Burke put the arm improperly on anybody else. He raised over $100,000 for her. They've got to analyze every single one of those contributions to make sure that they were legitimate and not part of some kind of extortion conspiracy. So,
well, wait, when you say that she hasn't told the public the truth, what hasn't she told the public the truth about?
I don't think she's told the public the truth about the true nature of her relationship with Ed Burke. How it was, for example, he came to her to ask her to give his kid a job. There's been halting...
To give him a promotion.
Yeah.
He was already at the sheriff's office and under investigation.
Well, but move him from the sheriff's office, which is an independent agency,
she said he came
to
her.
county.
So you're saying that that's a relationship that's closer than...
I think we don't know the full contours of that relationship. She's been extremely reluctant to talk about it, and I think she's got to come clean. The voters have to be able to go into the voting booth on Tuesday knowing that. And if without answers of the full contours of her relationship with Ed Burke, I do not believe that people, frankly, can trust what she's said so far.
What do you want her to come clean on?
I want her to explain to the voters the full contours of her relationship with Ed Burke. She's blamed it on Ann Burke. She said it's nothing. I don't think we have all the answers, and I know the public doesn't have all the answers.
And the Ann Burke thing would be a violation of her judicial code of ethics. She's not allowed to hold fundraisers.
Well, I said this at a candidate forum. She threw Ann Burke under the bus, whether intentionally or not. Of course, Ann Burke had nothing to do with Ed fundraising. She's a good and able lawyer, a good and able judge. She knows what the rules are. That had nothing to do with Ann Burke. It had everything to do with Tony Preckwinkle's relationship with Ed Burke.
So you think he held the fundraiser and she asked him to, or what do you think happened
I don't
there?
know, but I think she's got to explain that, and she hasn't yet.
Do you think Ann Burke can become Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court as she is supposed to do in June? Or is his imminent indictment, which is expected to come by May, going to somehow taint her?
Look, Ann Burke is a good person. I don't have an opinion on, and frankly don't know the nuances of how one gets selected as the chief judge. I just know that this is a very sad story for Ann Burke. And it's something that Tony Preckwinkle still has to explain to the voters.
And do you think he ultimately pleads guilty and cuts a deal with the feds?
Look, I don't know.
And if he does he have to cough up information that he has?
Look, the evidence against him it seems very compelling and powerful. And what I understand is the tip of the iceberg, what they revealed. So I think we just have to wait and see how that plays itself out over time. I don't want to play his lawyer. He's got very able counsel. But he's in a very difficult situation, no question about it.
And so it doesn't much matter if he wins or loses on Tuesday?
Well, I think he's got bigger fish to fry and bigger issues to worry about that are way beyond his political future.
Now, J.B. Pritzker did a budget address this week, and there was no mention of a Chicago casino, which has been the panacea for all the mayoral candidates to say that's how I'd partly pay for the pension spike. You've said Chicago has a revenue problem, and we have to have an honest conversation about that. What do you mean? How will you deal with the spike in pension payments if you're elected?
Well, listen, even if the casino were approved, that's years away from coming
And
online.
it's not going to be because you're not even proposing
Right.
it.
Even if the legalization of marijuana comes online, that's not going to happen this year. Even if there's a progressive revenue income tax, which I favor to give relief to people.
It's so many years away.
So we do have a revenue issue. And we're going to have an honest conversation about revenue. And anybody who says otherwise is either naive or not being honest about it. But I think we have to build the case for revenue. I've talked to people all over this city for months and months and months now. And they're worried about it. They're worried about the high taxes. They're worried about the regressive taxes that frankly feel unfair. Most people I know, and even people at the wealthier ends of the spectrum, say this to me: I'm willing to pay my fair share, but I have to know that the government is going to be responsible in utilizing our taxpayer dollars. That we're not just going to be collecting money and lighting it on fire as we seem to be doing now, that we're not going to continue to treat taxpayers like they're an ATM machine without any limit. And so for me, I think we have to do a number of structural things first before we have that conversation.
Let's go. What?
So, for example, I've been talking about this for a number of years. Police settlements, judgments, and attorney's fees, $50 to $60 million every single year. And we've already exceeded $500 million in the amount of money that we have to go into the bond market and borrow. And if that debt is not restructured over time, it's going to be double or triple. People are appalled when they hear that. There's no sense of urgency. We don't have a risk manager.
Well, how do you get a handle on that immediately?
What I think you do immediately is this. We have about 400 of these cases that are pending at any given time. If I'm the mayor, I tell my corporation counsel, go through every single one of those cases, triage them, and let's figure out how we stop the bleed. I don't want more $5 and $10 and $20 million plus settlements and judgments. Let's figure out how we do justice to the people that have been truly victimized, but let's get these cases out of the court and resolved immediately.
Are they quick to settle? Are they
No, I don't think they're, in fact, they're not too quick to settle. Another stream that's coming that frankly I think is going to be far worse than anything that we've seen related to Burge are the cases involving Detective Ray Guevara and Ronald Watts.
Right.
We've already had, I think, 50 cases where men have been exonerated or given a new trial on the basis of the, frankly, criminal conduct of these officers. That is going to add up. I said 2 years ago to Ed Siskel, the Corporation Counsel, you need to form a relationship with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office who's handling, and particularly the individual who's handling these post-conviction cases. We know who the frequent flyers are, the bad officers. What they should have done through a memorandum of agreement or understanding, whatever it is, to be conscious and aware of those cases real time when they're filed. And if we know that there's another Ron Watts coming, or we know that there's another Ray Guevara, or anybody else that the Corp Counsel should know is a problem officer, we need to intercede at the earliest possible stage, make sure we get justice for those defendants and resolve those cases. When they linger for 4 or 5 years and then they get a certificate of innocence, then they file the wave of federal suits against the city, they're not willing and interested in negotiating. They're just interested in knowing how big's my check, right? It's foolish that the city has not interceded at the earliest possible stage when those cases get filed to try to resolve them and save taxpayers from footing these outrageous bills. There's no sense of urgency around that. I could have been talking to myself because the city and Ed Siskel did nothing.
And we still don't have an early warning system for the bad officers.
We still don't have an early warning system. That's something that we recommended as part of our task force report back in 2016, almost 3 years ago. It's standard best practices in police departments across the country. It's been piloted. It's in the pilot stage, I believe now. But the delay was because Rahm Emanuel wouldn't invest the $3 million that were necessary. $50 to $60 million a year versus $3 million. Our return on investment for that meager investment could have been profound, but again, failed leadership.
Okay, so how else do you build the case for new revenue?
I think you build the case for new revenue by, I've recommended closing the clerk's office. The clerk's office in particular performs ministerial functions that could easily be handled by somebody in the executive branch. They have their own administrative function. They have their own finance department. For example, city stickers. I think we should get rid of city stickers, frankly.
Get rid of city stickers?
Get rid of city stickers. And the reason for it is this. First of all, people hate the city stickers. Number one, we spend so much money trying to collect
Police.
And police, the city sticker program, we are losing money, not gaining money through the city sticker program.
Well, it's about $100 million a year.
But it's $100 million a year that most of which, if you actually look at the data, we're finding people, and the debt has gone up exponentially, but we're not collecting the kind of resources that we need to.
And punishing people.
Oh, and the fact that people are losing their jobs, being driven into bankruptcy, losing their driver's licenses over non-moving violations like city stickers and parking fines, that is absurd. We can't keep balancing the budget of the city on the backs of people who are least able to shoulder that burden.
So you would get rid of the city stickers, and how would you pay for repair of roads? Because that's where that goes.
Well, frankly,
and some snow removal too.
No, frankly, I think one of the things we have to do is push for a larger infrastructure bill coming out of Springfield. That would be part of my Springfield agenda. The roads all over the city are a mess. Now, look, I'm going to say this. Part of the problem is we have tens of thousands of new cars that are on the roads. They're on the roads because of rideshare. They're on the road from rideshare cars, from frankly people who don't even live in Chicago. And in many instances, people don't even live in Illinois, but they're coming here, they're riding on our roads, they're polluting our airs, and they're paying next to nothing.
20 cents a ride.
Yeah.
20 cents a ride is what the mayor has levied on ride sharing. Do you think he has favored ride sharing because his brother is an Uber investor?
What I know is he's been patently unfair to the taxi cab industry here, who has to, the medallion is basically worthless at this point. People are going out of business after they've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, in a medallion that they can't even give away at this point. And the imbalance between what the taxis have to go through, the regulatory hoops that they have to jump through just to be able to get behind the wheel of a taxi as compared to rideshare, it's not even in the same universe of fairness. It's patently unfair. Now, what his motives are for doing it, I don't know. But the result is that we have created an unfair market advantage for the rideshare companies at the expense of the taxi cabs, and frankly at the expense of taxpayers, because we've got all these new cars that are clogging up our streets, adding to traffic congestion, using our roads, polluting our air, and they pay virtually nothing.
So
that
you
has
get
to
rid
change.
of city stickers and you replace it with what, a higher ride-sharing tax?
You have to, I think, more closely regulate how many cars can be on the road, and frankly, for people that are from outside of Chicago, outside of Illinois, for goodness sake, I think we got to look at some of the things that, for example, New York is doing is think about requiring a license in Illinois at a minimum, and then I think we've got to levy much higher fees against the rideshare industry.
How high?
We haven't looked at what the specific number is. I don't want to guess about what the number is, but I know that it's not 20 cents. It's not even
5 times as much as 20 cents.
Well, it's got to be something that is actually fair and it brings balance between the rideshare industry and the taxi cab industry. I want to make sure, frankly, that those people have a requisite amount of insurance. I've been hearing stories from people that they're getting into car accidents with rideshare drivers who don't have the requisite amount of insurance, and so then the person who's been victimized actually has to come out of their pocket to pay for either injuries or damage to their cars. So we have to look comprehensively at this whole program.
But how do you get fewer cars on the road? I'm not clear on what you
are
proposing here.
I think, frankly, when you regulate it more aggressively, you're going to see fewer cars on the road. We can't, if you know this, if you travel downtown or you travel on our expressways, we're becoming Los Angeles or Atlanta or Dallas, one of the high congestion localities all day. There's no rush hour anymore. It's perpetual. And getting around the city, particularly in the central business district, but also in the neighborhoods, is virtually impossible because of the huge amount of cars on our roads. Now look, I understand that people, this is a source of income for folks, right? That people have to, that are forced to supplement their income, but we have to do it in a way that is properly regulated so that we are not adding exponentially to, frankly, greenhouse gases and pollution, and we're not damaging our infrastructure, particularly our roads, without having a source of income to offset that. And right now, it's a free-for-all. That's wrong.
Before we go, you talk about criminal justice being a personal thing for you.
Yes.
How is that?
Well, I have a brother, frankly, the one that I'm close in age to, and frankly was my hero growing up, who unfortunately spent most of his life in the street life. He has robbed banks, he's been addicted to drugs, he's done other things. He spent the last 17 years of his incarceration life in a federal prison. He's now in his early 60s, has a high school degree, really had no legitimate income, and he struggles every single day. Now, my brother made choices that I know he regrets, but I've seen up close and personal how the criminal justice system and people being in it can really devastate families. My father died while my brother was locked up, and I know that that eats at him every single day. He's now comes out of prison, and my mother's 90 years old, and he's not seeing her for most of her, later part of her life. So when I think about these issues and I think about the challenges of the returning citizens who are coming back into our city by the thousands every month, we have got to make a life and a place for them. If my faith tells me that we have to believe in the power of redemption, and if we do not, as a city and as a state, frankly, allow people who have paid their debt to society to have an opportunity to participate meaningfully in the real economy, to be able to take care of themselves and their families, and really address some of the issues that drove them into the criminal justice system, we are missing a real opportunity. I do believe that we have to be our brother's keeper, but I also frankly think there's a real financial and criminal justice imperative. Having people keeping recycling through the system without providing them with an off-ramp that we could easily do is a mistake. It's a moral mistake, but it's also a fiscal mistake. And we are not going to get better as a community. And we think particularly about those communities on the south and the west side that are not well situated to absorb these thousands of people that are coming back every month. We're never going to be able to uplift the quality of life in those neighborhoods unless we also address the returning citizens issue. That's why I put out a policy to start the conversation around what we need to do. But the city has to lead on this issue. We cannot leave it to somebody else or let it just be there be a void there. We have to step up and lead on this issue. There are a number of great groups, not-for-profits like the Safer Foundation, like CARA, and some individual churches and neighborhood groups. But the city has to focus its attention on this population. It'll help us drive down violence and, frankly, give people hope, which is desperately what is needed.
Lori Lightfoot, thank you for joining us, and best of luck on Tuesday.
My pleasure.
And this has been the Fran Spielman Show, brought to you by AARP, which invites you to attend 2 free community panel discussions about key issues facing our city, March 13th on the South Side, March 18th in Pilsen. To sign up, go to suntimes.com/AARP forum. See you next week.